since we are talking so much about AI, in a company like Signet, which is a diamond retailer, how does AI impact your workforce positively and negatively?
Yeah, so I can start, and I think it's important also to consider the entire value chain.
Yeah,
So if
that's
we
true.
look, right, so we only exist because the raw materials, these beautiful, exquisite, once in a billion years, type of formation of natural diamonds come from the earth and are exquisitely um, crafted, cut and polished, and set into jewelry production, and then provided, through our stores. So AI actually helps at the very, very upstream start of the process, uh, monitor and help the truck drivers at the mine understand, like help them make sure that they're taking the most efficient routes, so that they save on fuel because diesel fuel is expensive.
I just wanted to very quickly add with respect to our employee experience. One of the things that AI has done from a human capital management perspective is it allows us to kind of start to reduce that bias that we may find in recruitment and also in the advancement of our team members or as our employees, because we're able to analyze workforce data in a way that we probably could not have done a decade ago. And we can start to get in a situation where we're anonymizing resumes and removing identifying information to start to mitigate biases that traditionally have existed in the recruiting space, if that makes sense.
In Youth We Trust sits down with successful entrepreneurs, business leaders, educators, and others from around the world. We spotlight how individuals and organizations are shaping a better world, directly or indirectly, for the coming generations through their focus on sustainability, equity, education, and more to empower young people to create the future they deserve. And now, in Youth We Trust.
Well, Matthew and Kaanji, welcome to the podcast in Youth We Trust.
It's great to be here.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, it's a great joy. Well, you know, you belong to the largest diamond. Is it the retailer or the distributor in the world in Signet?
We're the world's largest diamond retailer, largest diamond jewelry retailer. And we have about 2,700 retail locations across North America and the United Kingdom. But we also have extraordinary e-commerce brands, digital brands, Blue Nile and James Allen, that provide fine jewelry to for lots of different purposes online.
Mm. And in one sentence, Matthew and Kaanji, what do each of you do at Signet?
I work as the vice president for sustainability and social impact at Signet Jewelers, and that includes administering all of our responsible sourcing programs, as well as setting strategy and internal controls for measuring progress against our environment, social, and governance commitments, as well as our strategic philanthropy and cause marketing partnerships to help drive impact for missions like childhood diseases and environmental stewardship.
So basically, in a nutshell, Prashant, Matthew does all of the things. Um, and my name is Kaanji, and I am the Director of Diversity and Inclusion for Signet Jewelers. And in my role, responsible largely for making sure that we create and foster an inclusive workspace, not only for our team members, but we also are including our customers of different identities and diverse identities in a lot of the business decisions that we're making and continuing to foster and drive an equitable world.
Great, thank you. When you were younger, when you were in school or college, Kanji and Matthew, and Um, was there a problem or an issue that bothered you that you wanted to solve? Let's start with you, Matthew.
Well, one thing that comes to mind when I think about my career trajectory and my pursuit of problem solving is I was drawn to the analysis of the truth. Right? You have a set of facts, and those facts come from sources, and determining whether or not those sources possess bias or um, whether or not the statistics that they're bringing to represent their facts or arguments are pure and authenticated. That was something that was incredibly intellectually stimulating, but also connected to my sense of morality. And so I was drawn to the role of media providing a service really to the public and to my subscribers uh, as a journalist to help analyze lots of different sets of facts and the narrative that accompanies them. And so to me, that I was drawn, to that most.
And Kanji, what about you?
I think my lifelong quest has been a quest for equity and opportunity. And when I reflect on the why, I really need to hone in on an experience that I had when I was basically just a toddler, right? I'm the recipient of educational privilege. My mother was a divorced single mom with two children by the time she was 20 years old. And we went to a daycare facility in Northern California before it was Silicon Valley. And the owner of this daycare facility looked at me when I was 3.5 years old and said, "This young child is bright," and shared with my mother that there was a private school that had testing that was upcoming. And so my mother, who was unaware that private school systems even really existed, took me to the school for a test, and I was admitted. I was a scholarship recipient. And because of that experience and because of that identification by Miss Danny, the principal of Old Orchard School, the trajectory of my life changed completely. Right. I went to that private school, and then I went to an all girls boarding school, and then continued my education. And what I realized is that the opportunity that I was afforded was so different than many of the individuals for whom that I lived around. My family members weren't given the same opportunities because of our socioeconomic positions, right? And so for me, I think my lifelong quest was identifying opportunities and understanding the inequities that existed within our societies, maybe on an educational level and also on a socioeconomic level, and then understanding kind of what my role and my responsibility was for working within the system to start to make sustainable changes. And because of that, I became an attorney. I went to law school, became an attorney, and then the work that I do in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space now.
Brilliant. So you've actually carried that through, and there's a theme running through your entire not just career but life. And Matthew, in your case, you said that you really wanted to you know go after the truth. Now, is this something that you were able to pursue while you were in school or college?
Yes, I guess two of the most formative experiences were um, in high school. As editor of the school newspaper, one of the head custodian happened to be marched out of the high school in handcuffs. And so within a few hours, pre social media, there was a lot of word of mouth rumor milling, and some of the rumors became quite salacious. And so we met with our advisor, and we realized that we could just go to the police department and get the booking information and understand what the gentleman was accused of. So we took those measures. We acted responsibly, but the school district took punitive measures for against us, instructing all faculty to withdraw any college recommendation letters and censure us by pulling us out of class. And that experience and being able to be an advocate, a self-advocate with the school board and some of the understanding about what are the limits and what are the freedoms in the U.S. for freedom of the press. It underlined for me the personal responsibility that each of us has to not take for granted civil liberties and to assert oneself when they might be in jeopardy. And then at university, I went to American University in Washington, D.C. And one of the unique traits of being in Washington as a student journalist was being able to provide Washington, D.C. coverage for very, very rural communities across the country who, frankly, could not afford to have staff journalists provide them news coverage. And so, having come from a large metropolitan area in Chicago and going to school in a large metropolitan area, it was a terrific exercise to understand what are the issues that a rural community pays attention to and prioritizes, and how do they interpret, or how are they seeking to understand how Washington is working for them. Now that was 20 some years ago, and those issues are so current, right? We live in a more populated country where there's a huge chasm between the values or the perceptions of values in rural communities versus urban communities. And we have seen it played out in consecutive elections and debates over, the role of government and also the role of values in communities, our states, and at the federal level. So being able to provide that community a voice, essentially, with power brokers on Capitol Hill, holding elected officials to account for those communities that struggle to find representation. That was very empowering, and it felt actually patriotic to do that.
Yeah. Lots of commonality between what both of you are saying, right? It's giving people a voice, those who generally don't have a voice. So I think moving onto today, what you see around you, I want to distinguish between two different segments of the population. We're all working people, but at the same time, we have a younger generation that's following us. So, how do you see the younger generation today? Do you think that they're in a better position to tackle the problems that they see in front of them? Or do you think that they don't really have the skills or the access to be able to do so? Kanji, what do you think?
I absolutely think that they have the skills and the access to do so. And I think that they are uniquely positioned, probably more so than my generation was, right? And I think when we talk about the empowerment of the future generation and those that are currently entering the workforce, I don't think that they have some of the limitations that we may have had when we were coming into the workforce. And by we, I mean, Matthew just mentioned about 20 plus years ago, and I think we're of the same generation. But when we grew up, I think that there was this focus on staying within the limitations that societies and systems had set up and had established, right? Staying within the norms. But I think what the information age has shown us is that societies and systems, they operate exactly the way they were designed to, right? Our generation kind of fed into those systems, but the current generation, I see in their younger kids, and my son is a teenager, they're really trying to dismantle some of those systems. and they're able to create newness, right? And I think they're able to see and recognize where inequities and inequalities exist, and where there is a lack of opportunity for the under-resourced and the marginalized communities, and really are empowered to make those changes. And that's what I have seen in my life and in my role, and that's where I think that this generation is heading now.
That's so interesting. And Matthew, can I just focus on the same thing, but for the existing workforce or the adults in society? Do you think they are in a better position? And I'll switch the focus on to getting more specific about the kinds of problems we are looking at. But I'm quite curious to see, what do you think about that segment of the population?
It's difficult for me to overgeneralize how prepared our adult working population is, because the reality is we have four generations represented in our current workforce. And so while digital natives are just entering the workforce, we probably have two generations that are very proficient in the revolution of self-directed information. So rather than rely on gatekeepers like media or medicine, like medical authorities to or bankers, right, to provide and help with decision making, there's so much available to us based on search and AI assistance for us to self-direct the information we need to make decisions. So there's a lot more expected. I think that the current workforce is able to have four electronic screens in front of them, and our brain synapses have been conditioned to understand what stimuli we need to respond to first. Maybe the baby boomers or the generation before them, that still feels maybe a little bit some discomfort associated with that. So I think that it depends on, frankly, how much of your work experience has involved technology. And I do think it depends on where in the world you're working. There are tens of millions of working adults in different continents who have different access to technology, to different customs in the workplace. So I think it's highly variable based on geography and exposure to technology.
Absolutely. I think now let's look at the specific problems, right? There are two that stand out. There are, of course, many more. But, and let's take the US as an example, just so that it's just one case study, if you like, and we don't overgeneralize. One is AI, which is actually now promising a lot, but is also threatening to disrupt the way in which we do anything, whether we are a young person or whether we are an existing, existing employee, um, or we are the current workforce. The second is climate. I'm curious to see what impact you see, of these two issues on each of those generations, just very quickly. Uh, Kanji, what do you think? How do you think AI is actually going to help, but also in some ways drive a huge digital divide?
Yes, I can speak to the first issue and then would defer to Matthew on the climate issue. I absolutely think that AI holds tremendous potential to advance equity in the workplace because it helps to identify gaps and to reduce biases and promotes inclusivity. However, I think we need to be mindful that the effectiveness of AI really will hinge on the intentional and thoughtful design as well as implementation. Um, and to just harken back to a couple of points that Matthew just raised, I think that's to the user experience. And we do have certain individuals who may not be as familiar with or capable of understanding some of those limitations and kind of use AI without considering some of the potential negative impacts or drawbacks. But I also think that by addressing some of the challenges and adopting best practices, an organization can start to really leverage AI as a powerful tool and as a powerful ally in starting to ensure that we are achieving goals related to equity with respect to our human capital. And again, Matthew, I'd love for you to talk about some of the issues that Prashant raised with respect to the climate.
Sure. So when it comes to understanding environmental impact and climate risks, one of the aspects that is very relevant today is scenario planning. And so being able to build out a scenario so that you can see whether or not there is a human impact to a specific climate risk helps make it real for policymakers, business leaders, public sector leaders to come together and understand and appreciate what the real risk is and to what extent we want to control or maybe we tolerate the risk. So I'll give you an example. Coming out of COP29, right, there was a consternation about the level of investment to mitigate climate, meaning to arrest the continuous warming of temperatures in our atmosphere from pre-industrial levels. A fair question is whether or not we should be only focused on mitigation or whether or not we should be investing the same or even greater levels in climate adaptation, meaning how do we as a society adapt and thrive even in a warming climate?
No, absolutely right. Yeah.
And I would just add that from an AI perspective, our children and those young adults entering the workforce, thankfully, at least in many places in America, they're learning a fresher, more robust, less curated version of American history than I did or my parents did, right? And so we should be honest with each other when we're talking about AI, that AI has been with us for more than 2 decades. The cruise control feature in our automobiles is an AI assistant. The use of precision technology to diffuse incoming missiles and protect millions of people around the world from attacks. Those are AI assistants, right? And we've had machines learning the ways to help us write for many, many years. So there's no doubt that the new applications of AI, the ability for quantum computing to democratize AI applications in a variety of areas is growing. And so it poses questions of like what is the human role in service delivery of AI? But it's not an overnight shift. And much of it has been shepherded all of it has been shepherded by humans. So I just think that it's important to lift the veil on sort of the narrative of the history of AI and its role in our lives.
Yeah, yeah. And since we are talking so much about AI, in a company like Signet, which is a diamond retailer, how does AI impact your workforce positively and negatively?
Yeah, so I can start, and I think it's important also to consider the entire value chain.
Yeah,
So if
that's
we
true. Yeah,
look,
it's good.
right, so we only exist because the raw materials, these beautiful, exquisite, once in a billion years, type of formation of natural diamonds come from the earth and are exquisitely um, crafted, cut and polished, and set into jewelry production, and then provided, through our stores. So AI actually helps at the very, very upstream start of the process, uh, monitor and help the truck drivers at the mine understand, like help them make sure that they're taking the most efficient routes, so that they save on fuel, because diesel fuel is expensive, right? It also makes sure that there are sensors to to mitigate like anything that would delay a truck from exiting, the mine. Think of a flat tire as a very simple example. During the production process of cutting and polishing, there are AI applications to help extract as much value from a rough diamond so that it's perfectly planned and the maximum amount of high quality gems can be cut from it. That's machine learning. That's the interaction between the artistry and the engineering. And then when it's tested for authenticity independently, because we're a purpose driven company, so we want to make sure that if we say this is a natural diamond that weighs this much, that's a certain color, that's a certain clarity, it truly is. We want to have an independent grader evaluate that. All of their systems benefit from AI and machine learning to detect when there are bad actors contaminating jewelry with material that it shouldn't be in there. And then when it comes to retailing, I'm sure Kaanji can go deeper into this, but our ability to deliver accurate and expedient customer service, we incorporate AI into our customer service centers so that we're allowing the human to deliver a higher level quality service by providing quicker, more reliable information based on what our customers are asking. And then, of course, we're trying to be responsible in the way we use AI, and when it comes to marketing, like search engine marketing, things like that. So across our entire value chain, AI and machine learning adds value, and it helps in all of the cases that I mentioned, the employee or the team member around the world in their respective roles become more effective in delivering whatever they need to deliver to the value chain.
This episode is brought to you by Lumi.network. We're on a mission to help the next generation prepare to take on the world. Our AI-augmented platform runs quests that help 10 to 25-year-olds shape their future by developing AI, entrepreneurship, and design thinking skills to solve the most pressing business and social issues. If you or your organization wants to impact the next generation positively, we'd love to talk to you. To learn more, visit Lumi.network.
Yeah, I
Kaanji,
think that.
what do you want? Yeah.
No, I wanted to share that I think Matthew did a wonderful job of kind of laying out how AI has really started to change the game and shift some of the analyses that we have here at Signet, with respect to marketing, with respect to retailing, and then with respect to the customer experience. I just wanted to very quickly add with respect to our employee experience. One of the things that AI has done from a human capital management perspective is it allows us to kind of start to reduce that bias that we may find in recruitment and also in the advancement of our team members or as our employees, because we're able to analyze workforce data in a way that we probably could not have done a decade ago. And we can start to get in a situation where we're anonymizing resumes and removing identifying information to start to mitigate biases that traditionally have existed in the recruiting space, if that makes sense. But yeah.
Yeah, it does actually. It makes sense, but it also raises questions, because I was giving a webinar to a group of university students recently, and this was in the UK, and the greatest concern that they shared with me was that they are not they're getting basically they're not getting enough opportunity because they are getting screened out by AI, whereas people have now learned how to game this AI systems and inserting things which are not entirely true. So in a way, um, the whole screening thing is increasing bias and increasing um, malpractice.
That potential is there. Yes. I think when you talk about people being able to game the system, that's always going to exist. There were different types of biases that came into play, I think, before we were talking about the advent of AI or the use of AI in the screening process. And that is the fallacy of the human brain and the ways that our brains naturally make biased decisions and make biased assumptions and
Yes.
stereotypes for candidates. And so what I think is interesting, Prashant, is how you mentioned that there are certain individuals that think that they may be getting screened out of situations now with the advent of AI. I think that they're understanding what traditionally marginalized communities have felt for decades.
Mm.
Um, I'm someone who, again, I have a name that is non-European, that is not traditional. And so there were times when I submitted resumes and wondered if I wasn't getting called back because of my name. And there was a report that was done in Great Britain, actually, about 15 or 20 years ago. And they talked about the biases that exist in hiring departments about around an applicant's name, right? And I think,
Yeah, yeah.
whether it's are Tyrone and Lakeisha as employable as John and Laura, it was something along those lines. And we looked at how individuals who, when just looking at a resume, they had an ability or they had this tendency to have a biased assumption or make stereotypes about certain candidates and then have certain affinities that attach to those candidates, right? Because a candidate may have gone to the same college, right? If I saw that Matthew went to American University and I also went to American University, maybe moving him to the top of the pile, right? A shout out to our Washington, D.C. schools. I'm a graduate of Georgetown University. So I think that these biases have traditionally and always been there.
Mm.
Where we can leverage AI as a useful tool is to take certain of those biases out of the equation. But you've raised an interesting and an important point that I think I touched on earlier. It is about how we integrate AI. We can't use it as the only means or mechanisms, but we can start to use it effectively, and we can use it in a way that we use it thoughtfully in starting to create systems of fairness and allowing opportunities for individuals who maybe were not provided those opportunities in the past for different reasons. And I hope that that kind of makes sense and came across.
That's true. Yeah, that it does make sense. And actually, I want to shift the discussion to a different topic, which is, as a responsible, purpose-driven employer, are you taking any proactive steps? So, for example, to build, AI skills in your workforce so that they don't get left out, so that they actually really understand what the use cases are, because not everybody is a technocrat or lover of technology. Majority of us, and I'm generalizing here, are technophobic. Oh God, what is this? I don't know how to use it.
Yeah, so I think we approach it through two different facets, so to speak, using a jewelry term. So the first facet is governance, right, and making sure that since we have 11 different retail banners that we interact with customers through, we have a shared understanding and a systems view of what we're deploying and how we activate either AI or machine learning. So being able to codify standards, align on criteria, uh, is an important part of monitoring and managing, right? You don't manage what you don't measure. Um, so that incorporates not just the IT department, right? But it incorporates merchandising, marketing, HR as well. And then the other aspect that I think we've done, like we've really had a focused effort with the largest part of our workforce, which is our retail team members who are interacting with our customers. Sometimes the best progress occurs during a crisis. And so when COVID prevented our stores from opening, we trained tens of thousands of employees on how to effectively use technology to provide incredible customer service and make sales to our customers. As a part of like the tailwind of that effort, they have we've made available to them selling platforms that are digital. So even though you're in a store, you can still interact through like a social media interface that helps curate, you know, different designed pieces or different pieces of jewelry that your prior customers have indicated an interest in. Of course, the extra support that they're getting from that platform is all of the machine learning and all the algorithms that explain what that customer may be more inclined to appreciate from a product perspective. What
Yeah, interesting.
SKUs would make more sense. So I look back at, there was a time of crisis and it was out of necessity for us to reach our customers. But out of that it was an entirely new skill set that ultimately adds to both the customer relationships that the team member has, but also like their ability to, gain economically from those increased sales.
Yeah. And Kanji, what about building these skills in the coming generation? Is Signet doing anything to work with younger people?
Yeah, how are
Not
we
just
ups
AI, but also, you know, involving them in larger problems, even climate.
Yeah, how are we upskilling our younger generation, and what is it that we are doing to train our workforce in these changed and challenging times? One of the things that we're doing, and I would actually pass it back to Matthew to share one of his experiences, is we are creating a very robust internship program. And our internship program, we are really working with targeted individuals, younger individuals, to get them the skill set that is needed to be successful in this changed landscape. We have here at Signet what are called business resource groups. And one of our business resource groups is focused on early career professionals. And what this particular group does is we meet and we give the members of this group the opportunities to learn about areas that are going to start to impact them. So what Matthew was speaking of is some of the technology that we have in our stores and our retail locations. We really give them opportunities to start to work together and navigate those in a space, and we create these opportunities for growth and development for that particular group. But as I mentioned, our intern class that we have, and I'm not super familiar with kind of our current interns, but Matthew can talk a little bit about, I guess, the interns that he has had that run through his department, and he can share some of the successes that they've had there.
Yeah, so a couple points about the relevancy or like the interrelationship between skill building in early career professionals, and climate. You might not think that the facilities and real estate team is a hotbed of climate activism, but the reality is when we make investments to our stores, that we have a really great relationship. So they're picking up the skills associated with making, connecting energy efficiency in our stores to carbon reduction. That drives investment in different equipment in our stores, like lighting or HVAC systems. Likewise, the real estate and legal team we're working with them on understanding the contours of green leases. A green lease essentially, covers a lot of different areas, but it usually includes assessing the feasibility of on-site or off-site renewable energy. That's one of the work streams that catalyzed our cutting and polishing facility in Botswana to install on-site renewable energy, solar power, a solar system that will accommodate 98 to 100% of the total energy consumption they use in a year. So these are not, all of the teams that are associated with it are not part of the sustainability department, right? They're part of they're earlier career professionals who are taking advantage of connecting dots and systems thinking and understanding that how to take the outputs of a climate scenario, a climate risk scenario, and be able to understand, well, what are the different ways we can control the risks associated in that scenario. I'm a big fan of the EDF Climate Fellows Program. And so we actually work with a nonprofit, the Environmental Defense Fund, and they basically do matchmaking between college, undergraduate and graduate students and companies for internships. So the reason why I like it is because there's already a built-in investment in evaluating business from a sustainability lens, and there's a great project-based approach to the program where there's clear outcomes, clear objectives set at the beginning, and so we're proud to be partnering with EDF on that.
Yeah, well, great. I'm grateful that that this conversation, by the way, could easily have gone in the direction of there's a lot of uncertainty. There could be a lot of carnage around job losses. There's a danger that we are not meeting our climate goals. But I think I've seen that. I think there's something about both of you and the culture at Signet, which is making you look at the positive side of things and actually do things that you control. There's a lot that we do not control, but I'm thankful for that
Yeah,
lens. And I think we should pause at this point and continue the dialogue, actually, so that I get to know the culture and even better. This is very
yeah,
refreshing to see.
yeah. I think that it's also important to remember it could be a false choice. It's not optimism or pessimism. The reality is that we are in danger of tripping thresholds that pose severe climate risks. The question is not whether we think we're in danger of tripping those thresholds. The question is, if that were to happen in that scenario, how do we resource effectively and how do we prioritize human well-being? And that set of options, that set of decisions, those are, that's the conversation we want to have.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's exactly right, which is about what we control. Thank you, Kanji and Matthew. It was lovely to have you on the show, and I look forward to people getting to hear your perspectives, and I think also become more positive about the change and also relaxed about the change. than what we are seeing, or I'm seeing more generally out there.
Love is light.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. If you found this conversation valuable, please leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you have a story or someone you know does, please recommend them to us by email at hello@lumi.network. We'll see you next time on In Youth We Trust.